In my previous story I told about the house we rented with various little occurrences. After about 8 years in that house, my parents purchased a 2-story white house built in the year 1900. This will be a little lengthy, so I apologize in advance, but I'm just trying to get it as accurate as I can. The owners of the house said that the house was built by a doctor, who was a relative of one of their great-grandfathers. He built the house for a woman he loved who he was dating at the time. The woman sadly didn't end up marrying him and instead married a soldier. The doctor never married anyone in his lifetime but still lived in the house and actually used the bottom part of the house to practice medicine as the town's local doctor. I've asked my mother his name, but she never asked the owner of the house, so we never knew. The owners of the house were living in a trailer behind the house and were trying to sell it for a while so they could make room on the land to build a new house. They were actually going to tear the house down when my mother contacted them about purchasing it. My parents paid $6,000 for the house. We actually moved the house itself about 10 miles down the road to some land we purchased. The land we purchased, and actually all the land in that 15-mile block, was once a moonshine bootlegger trail back during Prohibition. Behind the house the trails are still visible and you can find glass everywhere along the trail. In my opinion, the history of both house and the land, coupled with the moving of the house and developing of the land, all contributed to the intense haunting that increased in activity in the 5 years that we lived there. I'm going to list the occurrences in no particular order. Keep in mind that after 3 years there, my parents divorced and my mom moved out and my dad spent all his time with his girlfriend. My brother was in college. So in the last 2 years I was pretty much living there alone, aside from one summer when my boyfriend lived with me and when my brother came back one winter for a few months. This took place from late 1998 to late 2003. A major phenomenon in the house was the voices. Once, my mother was upstairs in the hall and I was in my room about 10 feet away. I heard a very loud, "Hey," from out in the hall. So I came out of my room and asked my mother what she wanted. She said she heard the "hey" as well and didn't know where it was. I'm a musician, and after learning a very difficult piece of music in my room on my keyboard, I heard a very loud "great job." I didn't feel scared, but pretty amused. I responded, thanks, what else could I say? Later, when the hauntings increased, I was in the kitchen and heard my name called 3 times in a row by 2 distinct voices, followed by a door slamming about 1 foot away from me. This was followed by whisper after whisper. This was probably the most scared I ever was in the house. I was alone, and it was very late. I felt very watched and actually spent the night in my car. In the surrounding woods, talking and laughter was heard by both my father and myself. Things moving were a rare occurrence, but a few things did happen. My boyfriend and I would be in the living room, both on separate couches, and we would sit there and literally watch every curtain, 5 of them, in the room slowly close, one after another. We were never scared, just amazed. Also, since we had a window unit air conditioner, we kept all the doors open throughout the house for circulation. After opening all the doors one day, we left for work, and had to turn right around to pick up some keys. Every door in the house was closed. Lights. In the surrounding woods, I constantly saw orbs of light wandering around in the trees. My dad told me he saw the same thing. Once while I was in bed, a blinding light woke me up from the corner of my room. As soon as I opened my eyes, it disappeared in a few seconds. Small bursts of light were frequently seen in my room. Like little sparks from a cigarette lighter. They left you with a happy feeling. I should mention at this time, I was around 16 and experimenting with my occult phase. Specifically, I was interested with creating and contacting energies and spirits from nature. Maybe there was a connection? These days I'm not religious at all, but I guess it's something to consider. Apparitions and shadows were seen more often than we'd like. My mother said that for the last year she lived there, she would be sleeping on the couch in the living room, and every night at around 2 or 3 a.m., she would see a black mass at the ceiling in the adjacent dining room that would undulate while black scarf-like shapes would flutter in and out of the mass. She said it terrified her and she couldn't sleep or take her eyes off of it. After about 2 or 3 hours it would go away. I would really like to hear people's thoughts on this. I've had several friends tell me they've seen shadows and curtains move in the house while waiting for me to come out to their car. I was alone at the time, but there's always a small possibility it could have been me, but the locations never matched up. For example, I would already be outside when they would see the curtains upstairs shift as if someone was peering out at them. Once, while in my room, I was attempting to get a video camera to work. When I brought the viewfinder up to my eye, I clearly saw the shape of a woman in my doorway. It was an old camera, so the image you saw in the lens was black and white and slightly blurry, but it was clear what it was. This scared the hell out of me. I brought it down and didn't see anything in the doorway. I tried to pretend I didn't see anything so as not to give whatever it was the satisfaction. Almost everyone who's lived there at some point, between our friends and family, have seen shadows and heard and seen doors close. Usually the person was alone. Random things. My boyfriend, who thought I was full of it until he moved in, had a strange sleep paralysis experience in the middle of the day while we were watching TV. He told me he clearly felt choked, while he heard "Adam" whispered to him. He said that earlier he dreamed about an atom. He didn't tell me this. I had a similar dream about an atom while living there. After that dream, I entered a raffle for a free used upright piano. I won the raffle, woohoo, and when the piano arrived the manufacturer was, I swear to God, Adams. I still own it. We babysat a little girl, about 2 at the time, who constantly would point to the dining room and say, "Who's that man? Who's that man?" She would just stare in the room sometimes also. The cats also stared into the room near the ceiling. The dining room had a creepy feeling to it. Once, during a hurricane, we had some friends and family over that lived in mobile homes. We were all sitting around telling some personal ghost stories when a picture flew off the mantle. No one said a word about it and we stopped telling our ghost stories. There was tons and tons more. I could go on forever but I won't. Eventually the ghosts were just part of the background and I wasn't scared. But during the last year there, things were getting more extreme and more blatant. I felt threatened quite a few times there. The last time I went in to grab the last few boxes of mine, I felt extremely nervous and left ASAP. After my parents' divorce, my dad eventually sold the house. I moved far away from the house and haven't been back to my old hometown since. My dad did mention the new owners were having some trouble with people making noises outside the property, whatever that means, but he hasn't kept in touch. I still have vivid nightmares about this house. I was pretty scared several times, and I'm sure it scared me more than I know. I have no desire to go back there. So that's my other story about another haunted house I lived in. Cheers.